And, honestly, it works out well because that means that we have something positive to talk about. So
there we go.
I like that. Okay, let me make sure it's live. It should be. Okay, I think we're going. So I want to say good morning to everybody. Happy Friday. Fridays are always a good day. And I'm so excited because we have a chamber chat this morning with our representative, David Spiller. And I want to say, Mr. Spiller, I've been so impressed by your level of communications with your constituents, just keeping everyone in the loop and staying on top of things and your responsiveness. So thank you so much for serving our community in this way. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And it's made easier in that respect just because I've got a very good staff here. Susanna Feather, my chief of staff, does a great job. Michael Davis, my legislative director, and Paige West, my legislative assistant, they all do a fantastic job. They work hard. We're probably the hardest working office. I'm speaking for them. I can't speak for myself. It's probably the hardest working office in the building. They're up here when everybody else is doing something else. And I think they feel like if I'm here, they're going to be here, and everybody's working. So, but they do a great job helping me with that. So thank you.
They really do. In fact, I was just bragging on Susanna last night, and just her, her communication is so excellent. I never feel ignored or put off. She's always friendly. And so I just really appreciate you guys very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know these last few weeks, I guess months, years, whatever, but have been kind of a whirlwind, I'm sure, or maybe not a whirlwind in some ways. But kind of, if you don't mind, give us the rundown about what's going on in the Texas legislature, and maybe just give us a little bit of history and then where we are right now. Is that okay?
Let me tell you where we are now, and then I'll kind of tell you what we did, how we got there. And yes, it's been very different. It's been very different for everybody else, obviously different for me because I'm coming in new. And so everybody says, man, you've had quite a remarkable first session.
Yeah.
So, or series of sessions. So no, as of yesterday, we gaveled in at 4:00 yesterday. We've been trying to get a quorum, and quorum is 2/3 of the body. There are 150 representatives, so 2/3 is 100, and we've been trying to get to that 100 number. We've had all the Republicans show up, which was 83, and so we've had to pick up 17. The math says 17 Democrats. Well, we weren't able to do that. We started off before let me just say we had our first session on July the 8th. Everything seemed to be on track. We had bills referred to committees. In fact, there was a special committee on constitutional rights that was created just to deal with some of the issues that we're dealing with these special sessions after the governor makes the call. And so everything seemed to be good over the weekend, and then the wheels fell off on Monday, and the Democrats ran to Washington, D.C. Most of them did, and stayed there the rest of the session, and flew on a private jet, stayed up there. People paid for their way to stay, and so they did whatever they did. We won't get into all that unless you want to. And then that session ended on August the 6th. Well, the governor, true to his word, said, hey, I'm going to call another special session. We're going to be right back here. So, which he did the very next day for the 7th. So we started the 7th, again, didn't have a quorum. So when you don't have a quorum, you can't do business. And the Senate can do business. Theirs operate differently, and they're passing bills, and they did their part. But we have more Democrats, and we have other people that didn't show up to do the job that they were sworn to do. And so they issued a call of the House, which basically says that certain things happen, but also these Democrats can be arrested, whoever's not here without an excuse. But the problem with that is if you're out of state, that doesn't work. You can't, and arrest also, I've had this question, doesn't mean that you go put them in jail. It means that DPS or the Sergeant at Arms would take them, bring them to the House floor and literally lock them in or keep them here for us to be able to do business. So we were not able to do that. And then we've been trying to get this, and the speaker issued warrants. We went through this a second time, and we've been fighting court battles, or they have, because some courts have issued, writs of habeas corpus. I mean, there've been other things that they've issued orders, restraining orders, prevent the governor and the speaker from following through and doing what the Constitution says that we can do and what the House rules say that we can do. And so the Supreme Court said, no, you can't restrict them from doing that. So in the meantime, there have been a lot of backdoor discussions with getting some of these folks here. So brings us to yesterday, and we had enough Democrats come in, and to make quorum, though, we only then, instead of have to have 100, we had to have 99. And you think, well, wait a minute, David, you said 100, but it's 2/3. But we had Jake Elsie, who was also a freshman representative, ran for the U.S. Congress seat in late July. He was elected to that, which created a vacancy.
So that vacancy doesn't count against your quorum.
Correct. And with that, you're still at 100 when you do the math on the 2/3. But what also happened yesterday, Leo Pacheco, who is a Democrat out of San Antonio, he resigned because I talked to Leo, even myself, at the end of the other session. He said, look, he had a bunch of folks mad at him there in San Antonio, Democrats and so forth. He just said, look, life's too short. I've got other things to do. And I've been here a while, and I've got a job where they'll have a professorship at San Antonio College. So I'm not going to run again. Well, not going to run again. Probably when they told him, Leo, we're either going to have to pick you up and arrest you and bring you here, or you can resign. And he decided to resign. So that brought the number to 148 in the House. 2/3 of that brings us to 99. We had just enough Democrats come in yesterday to allow us to get to that 99 number. So with that, we had a quorum, which immediately means that we can, they bring the bills in from the Senate. We have bills that we have filed, and you refer bills. You have what's called a first reading, and then you refer the bills to the various committees. So we did that and then adjourned until Monday at 4:00. So some people think, well, why in the world would you come here? And then all of a sudden you adjourn till Monday. Well, the reason is under our rules, those bills have to be heard in committee. So they have to be referred to a committee, heard in a committee. So there are committee hearings that will start in 20-something minutes. That those committees will start meeting, hearing bills, and there are different committees. The main committee that was created, that Constitutional Rights and Remedies Select Committee, will start today at 9:30. They will pick up again tomorrow at 8:00. They will take on the bail reform bill from the Senate, the joint resolution that calls for there's some changes that would need to be made to the Constitution for that. And also the thing on rescheduling the primaries, because that would need to be done as well. Tomorrow, they'll take up what they took up the first time around, which is the election integrity bill, the bail reform bill. And the first time around, I think that first hearing went over 17 hours. So there's a lot of work that's going to be going on today and tomorrow, and possibly extending to Sunday. But at the end of all that, I anticipate that those committees, and that's not the only committee, public ed is scheduled for next Wednesday, but appropriations, we have bills referred to appropriations. They'll be meeting on Saturday. We have bills referred to, what was the other one? There's another committee also as well. Oh, State Affairs. I anticipate that State Affairs is going to meet tomorrow as well to hear one or two bills. So I think what they'll do is call these people in. They will hear the bills. They'll take testimony, and then they will, because you're required to give 24 hours notice to do those things. And then I anticipate that they're going to vote those bills out of committee. Then they will go to calendars. Calendars will meet presumably say on Sunday, and we'll schedule it for 4:00 on Monday. So some of these bills that were just referred yesterday or last night will be heard on the House floor, I anticipate, on Monday. So that's the plan. So
it feels good to be able to get to work.
Right. So everybody's ready to move forward. We're sick and tired of this crazy stuff. And so so that's kind of there are rules that we have to post notice, for the committee and vote it out. Then it goes to calendars puts it on, and on their special session, those are usually the notices are 24 hours. So unless that's waived, and that probably wouldn't be, so anyway, all those things are moving forward.
Great. Okay, so gosh, I have so many questions rattling around, so I'm going to do my best to keep it organized.
Sure.
But one of the main things I want to talk about, and I don't mean to lessen the significance of any of the other bills being presented, but I believe it was the election integrity bill or voting bill that caused the Democrats to flee because they were trying to break quorums, my understanding.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about that bill, what it means, why this is causing some issues in the Texas House, and what it means for the constituents. Because I think, excuse me, at the end of the day, I'm thankful that our representatives stayed to do your job. Thank you for that. I don't know how other communities feel or other people feel with their representative leaving during their job that they were elected to do, but I'm thankful to have somebody who stayed to do their job. But let's talk a little bit about what that bill would do, because I've done some research. I've tried to educate myself. You're obviously 1,000 million times more educated on it than I am, and I'm having trouble understanding where there's a divide there. I don't understand what the two sides are to that.
Great question. And the answer is, I don't either. I've told people that, look, the Democrats left. They claimed that they left over the election integrity bill, which they called voter suppression, Jim Crow 2.0, all these other things. Not true. And in fact, if you ask them, or if actually in the media today, if they were to ask them, okay, well, what is it specifically in the bill that you have objections to? I would say that you're going to have a hard time hearing an answer as to what that is. I tell people, look, I've read the bill. Maybe they should read the bill. I've read the bill. And when you get to the voter suppression part, give me a call, because I haven't found that yet. If anything, it makes it easier to vote. As they said, it makes it easier to vote, harder to cheat, but it makes it easier in many respects to vote. It expands early voting hours. There are many of these states that don't even have early voting. Texas does. It expands those hours. And many counties in my district don't even have where you can vote early on Saturdays and Sundays. This allows for that if they choose to do so. There are a number of things that this does to expand voting. It makes voting secure. It's not too much to ask to have a voter ID or have an identification. All you have to do if you're going to vote by mail, you either have to give them your voter ID number, you give them your driver's license number, or you give them the last four of your social security number. We live in a day and age where we're requiring to provide an identification is not uncommon. You can't go anywhere or do much of anything without showing an ID. It's not too much to ask to require this, because there have been many, many instances, contrary to what has been said, of fraud. There have been 534 cases of election fraud, of convictions. There are over 500 cases pending right now for election fraud. There are 480 some odd current investigations for election fraud. So for them to say that there was no fraud, that's just simply not true. And we have the documentation. I can give you every single case and case number and the style of the case. It's not made up. It's all documented. So no, the bill itself is fair. There's some things that we've looked at from a rural perspective that it's like, look, as with many things, look, we see what you're trying to do here. We're good with it, but some of these things are more difficult for smaller counties. We need to take this part out. So there have been a lot of those discussions. I'm not going to say that the bill is perfect in that respect, but it's certainly fair. It certainly provides for secure elections. It provides for auditable elections so that you actually can go in and confirm that this voting was going on. What it prevents, if you ask them, they'll say, well, it stops 24-hour voting. Well, 24-hour voting was never the law anyway. You primarily had one county, Harris County, that tried to do that in certain precincts. And we need to be uniform in what we do. They say, well, we had drive-through voting. Drive-through voting, not the same as curbside voting as a convenience. My mother's 86 years old. We worked with her to allow her to do curbside voting. Mm-hmm. but that's different than drive-through voting where there's no
Okay.
identification. So a big distinction there.
So
Drive-through
hang
voting,
on.
yeah.
I want to understand that really fast because that was a point I really wanted to try to wrap my head around. But so with drive-through voting, there was, are you saying there was not identification required or not a driver's license required for the drive-through voting?
Some of what I've understood that they did in Harris County, that they did not require that. They didn't require that also on their mail-in voting. And so, and their numbers didn't add up. When you look at their drive-through voting numbers, they had more people voted in a certain area than were registered. That's not, that's not voter security. So there were a number of those things, number of discrepancies, and Texas does not provide for drive-through voting. That's not at all what it said. They adopted that and used the provisions because of COVID to say, okay, well, we're allowed to do that this time. Well, they weren't specifically allowed to do it. And the other problem is some of these penalties were next to nothing. So you had to beef up the penalties for violations of election law fraud to make it to dissuade people from breaking the law, because otherwise all you could do is a slap on the wrist. Right. So there are a number of those things that were addressed. So let's see, what was the other point besides the drive-through and the
did you address the mail-in ballots having to put the
Social
Security or driver's license number on?
Completely reasonable. You certainly want to be able to track people that voted and people that didn't, and to prevent the fraud. So all of those things are important in the election code and make it uniform. They complained about poll watchers. Well, this allowed for poll watchers to harass people and so forth. Well, there are laws on the books preventing that right now. Poll watchers have been part of our law since at least 1951. Poll watching is nothing new. If anything, it provides restrictions on what poll watchers can do. But as we've seen from a national scale, poll watchers have been denied access to do exactly what they're there for, to ensure that things are properly done. And if there's a problem with a poll watcher, you can have them removed, or you can warn them and have them removed. There are things in the law already in place on that. But poll watchers, it gives them the opportunity to do things that they didn't, to observe, because some of the poll watchers were being prohibited from seeing what's actually going on. And that doesn't need to happen. That defeats the purpose of having a poll watcher. So this stuff about poll watchers doesn't really make any sense either. And so the whole thing, when you pin some of these folks down about the election integrity bill and what specifically concerns or problems they have with it, or what is voter suppression in there, if you'll listen, they will quickly change the subject. Well, we should be focused on this and this and this. We should be focused on COVID. We should be focused on the grid. We should be focused on other things. And we are focused on those things. We had many bills passed dealing with the grid, and that's in the power supply, that's a much better position. But these other things are on the call. If they want to come here to the House, this is where the people's business is done, then they need to come here and debate these things. That's what we're here for.
Well, and that I think is the best point, and I've had some of those conversations with some people I really respect. And, my take on it, and not that you're asking for my opinion, and it's really kind of irrelevant, to be honest, but regardless, my take on it is that that's exactly how our democracy is designed, where you do have people who debate that, and there need to be concessions from both sides that, that end up with a really solid bill to protect voter integrity. And so, I listened to a few videos and some of the Senate committee hearings and some other things. And, one of the things that I thought was a valid point, I guess I'll say, is that not having the drive-through voting, not having, or further restricting or requiring verification of mail-in ballots could make it difficult for somebody who either isn't physically able to stand in a line or does not have the time to commit to standing in a line to vote on the day, on voting day and on election day. And I thought, okay, I get that. But I think there are a million plus other ways to address that issue, rather than not requiring some type of verification or documentation, identification, I should say. If we need more polling places, if we need more poll workers, if we, like, let's address the real issue and
Right.
not create another problem by trying to fix one problem.
I'll give you
That's
a
kind
good
of my take.
point, and I'll give you an example. This bill actually, little discussed part, says that if you're in line to vote and the time period closes, then you are allowed to vote, even if it's after that time. If you stand in line to vote and you're there in time, then you get to cast a vote. Our law really never said one way or the other. That was not statutorily in place. And so again, it clears it up. If I'm in line and just because there's a long line to vote and it goes past the 7:00 p.m. or 5:00 p.m. or whatever it may be, if I'm in line to vote, they have to let me finish voting. This thing also provides where people can't get off work if they work odd hours. Your employer has to allow you time to get off work to go vote. All these things are in this bill. That doesn't sound like voter suppression to me at all. That's just crazy talk. It really is. So.
And do you have any good relationships with some of your Democrat counterparts that maybe could shed some light so that we can understand, and that's been my goal. I've tried, like I said, I've tried to do some research and I've really tried to understand, both sides of this argument. And I think typically that's something that comes pretty naturally to me, to look at a situation and say, okay, I can see both viewpoints. I'm not sure I really do in this situation, but have you asked to try to understand, like, maybe those sticking points or where there could be concessions made to come to an agreement?
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because one thing we haven't talked about is the fact that this bill is not the same bill, and there's a Senate version, House version, and those
Right.
are very similar. But at the end of the regular session, you had some last minute things and some things in that bill that where the bill was not perfect. There's some things that probably need to be addressed, and it was a last minute deal, and I won't get into why it was a last minute deal and what all was done. But the bill, as it was filed in the special session, was actually a negotiated bill that where Republicans and Democrats sat down and said, hey, let's try to fix this deal where we ended up, because we had objections to how it was. And so which they walked out on the last night and prevented that from being voted on. And they said, look, let's try to fix this. And what the Democrats don't really want to admit is that the bill that we have now is the negotiated version of that. That is, there were concessions made and things done to get this bill in the position it is. And that's what was so frustrating, that some of that was done, the hearing was held, and then they all walked out afterward after it was ready to vote on. So,
And that was done in a committee? Is that what you're saying?
it was done. No, that was not. That was done before it ever got to the committee. There were some discussions in the month of June with stakeholders and people involved in that process where there were changes made so that we knew that it was coming, and they made changes to that bill. If you compare, I think it was Senate Bill 20 with what HB 2 or 3 or whatever the numbers change each session, so I lose track. But either way, if you compare those, they're a little bit different, and those are the negotiated parts that were worked out to try to make it palatable. Andy Murr, Representative Murr from Junction, carried the bill in the special, and then again in the second special. He sent an email out to every House member. They said, look, I'm carrying this. Here's the version. If you have any problems, questions, concerns, things you want to talk about, things you don't like, please call me. I'll be happy to visit with you about those. I want your input, so forth. Crickets. And even the one guy that came back, Philip Cortez, and I like Philip, but he came back and a lot of the Democrats lit him up because he came back. And so he quickly went back, but he said, I came to negotiate the deal and talk to them, and then reported that, well, they wouldn't make any changes. They wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't, talks were unproductive. Well, I asked folks involved, and he never talked to anybody. He just turned around and left and went back to Washington, D.C. So we are here. We're reasonable people. If there are things that need to be addressed, then we're not going to compromise on principle. But the particulars about what needs to be done, I think anybody here is willing to work with them, but you have to be here for that to happen.
Right. Well, and I think, looking at something like voter integrity, that's a bipartisan issue. That's not, I don't see how this has become a Republican Democrat debate. This is something we should all be on the same page about, because isn't that something everybody would want?
Should. That makes sense. Part of the issue is in other states, we hear in other states about abuses. And I will tell you that the word that I have received is that some of these other folks have decided here's a way to abuse the system and take advantage of the system and get election results that are in your favor that should not be. And the word that I have received is that those folks don't want these safeguards in Texas because it would prevent that type of abuse. You know, my view is it needs to be safe and secure, whether you, same as you, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, or whatever, we need to have safe and secure elections, and the people need to have confidence in their government and to know that their elections are actually valid and that they stand and we can live with that. It's when we don't have that confidence in the system that we have people that just you know, that distrust the entire system and feel that it's all rigged and feel that it's invalid, and we can't have that. We need to have confidence in our system.
Absolutely. And I think we need to be able to have confidence in our elected officials. And, you know, and I'm not poking at you, I hope you know that, but I mean, at the end of the day, we need to have confidence in the way that our system works and that our elected officials are going to work together to find the best solution here and not treat it like, I mean, you know, I feel like the Texas House has become a junior high playground, and it's kind of ridiculous. I mean,
Right.
you know, and I don't want to, I know that everybody probably has great intentions and feels like this is the right thing to do, and I respect that greatly. But I also respect just good debate, and I think if both parties are willing to listen to each other, there's a consensus that can be, you know, that we can find there.
Yeah,
There's
somebody told me one time that the House is kind of like 13th grade, and that may have been giving it too much credit. You're right, it may be more junior high than that. But no, I mean, I deal with a lot of good people and people that say, look, I don't know everything. I want to hear the discussions. I want to hear the discussion on both sides. And it may very well be that, you know, somebody has some valid points and we need to amend or we need to do things. But you can't do that if you're not here. And my view is this. I took an oath when I took this office to swear to faithfully execute the duties of the office of this job. And I cannot faithfully execute the duties of that if I refuse to show up for work. I mean, to me, I'd be violating my oath, and I take oaths very seriously, and I'd be violating my oath to do my job if I didn't show up for work. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I've been here. That's why a lot of good folks are here and have been here working hard, taking time away from their job, taking time away from their families, taking time away from loved ones and vacations and everything else that a lot of people got to have. And so it's a sacrifice. It is for everybody. And so it's frustrating when you have other members that are off going to Washington, D.C. or to Europe or the Caribbean and not coming here and doing their job. And you know, I do think that the polling that we've heard in these districts is not good, even among Democrats. Many are saying, hey, we're happy you're away, keeping this voter suppression bill from going forward. But many of them are just saying, look, why don't you show up to work and get the deal done and let's move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really the primary message. And that's, you know, and like I said, I have had some really good conversations with some of the people in our community that I know are very supportive of the Democratic Party. And I wanted to get that opinion. I wanted to understand. And I think at the end of the day, I just keep going back to, but that's why we have this process in place, is so that there is good debate, discussion. And I hope, you know, I think I do have faith in you, and that's just based on our, you know, few conversations, but I hope we can all have faith in our elected officials that they'll listen to each other and try to come up with a bill that makes sense for the whole state and not just for their district. But
well, and I know a lot of your questions have been about the election integrity bill, but there are a lot of things on this call. There are 19 different points. The governor increased those from the first session to the second. And there are a lot of things that need to be done. And even the Democrats would agree these things need to be dealt with. We've got bail reform. We have some serious problems with bail reform that we have to do. It doesn't affect us as much in rural communities, but in the bigger cities, it's a huge problem. And the problem is that bad guys in the big city don't just stay in the big city. They come out to our district and commit crimes if if they're out on bond, and maybe they shouldn't be out on bond, or maybe their bond should be higher. And judges and magistrates need to know what someone's criminal history is before they just assign a number based on what a sheet says that they should do for that particular charge. So there are a lot of things with that. There are a number of things on the call, whether, the 13th check for teachers, the border security. Border security is a huge issue, and I'm working very hard. I've co-authored a bill. In fact, there was a slight difference in what was on the governor's call the first time with the second, dealing with criminal prosecution. And we've worked with some folks. I've worked with the AG's office. I'm working with Representative Ben Lamont on his bill, House Bill 154, that deals with a criminal penalty and making it a felony offense, not to just, and the statute is such that it doesn't violate the recent case of Arizona versus United States. It says I think it characterized it properly, where it says, look, if you miss a checkpoint, if you don't come through a checkpoint as you're required to, a federal state checkpoint, then that makes it a criminal offense, and you can prosecute someone that. You can't technically imprison someone just because they're here illegally. There's a process you go through with that, but when they violate a checkpoint, that's a different matter. So there are ways that we're trying to deal with those things and deal with border security. A huge problem for our state, huge problem even for our district, even though we're not on the border, because those folks don't just come across and stay and hang out and eat DQ dudes at the Dairy Queen and Del Rio. They are coming into our district, and they're going throughout the nation. And so we need to address that problem. Everyone needs to be here so that we can try to work to solve those problems.
And I want to talk about that for just a minute if you have enough time. I think I told you 30 minutes. We're probably, we are, we're already over that. So I apologize. If you need to go, let me know. But I want to talk about that because what is the main problem that we're concerned about regarding the border?
Well, we've got multiple problems. And in no particular order, the problem is that many times when you have a border and you don't follow the laws that you have, we're a country of immigrants. We get that. We understand that. We are not opposed to people coming into our country as long as they do it legally. It's when they completely bypass the legal process and do it illegally. And what's going is we have vast amounts of criminals, hardened criminals, murderers, rapists, others coming across our border unchecked into our state and into our nation. We have drugs coming in by the ton. Fentanyl, highly dangerous, is coming in at record levels. We have human trafficking. We work so hard in the legislature to address issues with human trafficking, and yet on the other hand, we allow, or our federal government allows, and we're not here to address it better even from the state level. We allow human trafficking to come in at an alarming rate, or at any rate is unacceptable. But we're allowing that to happen. We have people coming in with COVID. We have with the Delta variant, with the other things, we have issues with COVID. We say on one hand, we're going to mask people, we're going to do all these other things, require immunizations, and yet on the other end, we're letting people come in that have COVID, and we're not taking any precautions. We're not testing. We're not doing anything, and they are coming into our state and our communities. So all of those things need to be addressed. Aside from the issue, the general issue is, what are we going to do? I mean, our hospitals have to take care of people, whether they're here legally or illegally. Our schools have to educate children, whether they're here legally or illegally. That is a huge burden on our infrastructure with no additional income to address it. So we are just further absorbing those costs. I talked to a hospital administrator in our district, not too far from Graham, actually he's up in Vernon, and told the story of how somebody came in, they were ill, and no other hospital, because they didn't qualify for Medicaid, no other hospital would accept them. No nursing home would accept them. They basically had them and had to deal with them. And that one patient, before he passed, unfortunately, after a long period of time, and they gave him the best care that they could, but that one patient alone cost the hospital out of pocket over $100,000. Well, you multiply that by all the people that we have. what are you going to do? It's hard enough on rural hospitals to address things with under Medicaid and under insurance and some of the stuff that they have now to survive, much less adding that to it. It's just our system cannot absorb that, and we've got to address it. And our federal government has just decided we're going to have an open borders policy, and they just let them come in, and we are doing our very best. DPS, and I've been to 2 briefings on the border, one in Del Rio, one down in McAllen, and I've been in helicopter trip where we're watching people. There were, I mean, in the 45 minutes I was on the helicopter, there were 5 different groups that came across, and they're notifying Border Patrol. Border Patrol picks them up and does whatever. But we have got to do something to secure our border.
What is the solution there?
Number one, it would help if the federal government did their job and enforced federal law. That would be helpful. I think if we, in the places where you have a wall, good fences make good neighbors. If you had a wall or had something there to prevent people from just crossing and coming over unchecked, we need to have that. And President Trump had, we had started that. He had made a big effort in that regard. We can complete that, but we need to have the federal government do that. And it's difficult for the state to do that. You deal with issues of eminent domain and other things. How are you going to do that? Because there's some federal land that you can do that on, but if the federal government won't cooperate, then you're going to have to do something on a state level. And it's just more cost. It would be helpful if the federal government would actually do what they're supposed to do. But secondly, I think if we act as a deterrent, and because our laws otherwise, right now, all we can do is detain someone, arrest them for criminal trespass. And criminal trespass is generally a misdemeanor under current law. And that's what, like I say, we're trying to address some of those things. But there's, we can slow it down, but it's very difficult to stop it. And there are things under Title 42 of the U.S. Code that you can have people removed. There's the other code, Title 8, USC 1325, 1326, where for criminal events that you can return someone. But, it has to be a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude or an assaultive type crime. And currently, our law doesn't really provide for that. So again, we need to have something from the state level to address that. And we have facilities, we have things that we can hold people and can do, and we're working to try to get that done. So, and this is going to seem like a silly question. I might get made fun of for it later, but I can live with that. I have no pride left anyway. But so why are so many people illegally crossing the border to come into the United States, to come into Texas, let's say specifically? Well, we're the greatest country in the world. And, but some people, it could be, number one, I think they were invited before the election to say, basically, hey, if you'll come over here, we're not going to stop you. And word gets out in the migrant community. They know that. And some of these folks have very good intentions, and they're seeking asylum from oppression and from problems. But most of the people coming across our border are not from Mexico. They come through Mexico, but the vast majority are from other countries. We have countries, from all over the world, from the Middle East. We have terrorists. We have other people coming across our southern border because they can. We have Haitian. We know about all we have people all over Central America, but we have, there are a multitude of countries that are sending people across Mexico because they can. Because that's the easiest way to get in. We don't have a problem with people coming from Canada illegally. We have a problem with people coming from our southern border. So they're here for a number of reasons. I'm okay with that. They just need to follow the law. But some of these folks are here for bad reasons. You've got drug dealing, you have cartels, you have gangs, you have all sorts of things, and they're up to no good. We need to be able to regulate that, stop that, prevent that. And if we catch those folks, we need to be able to incarcerate them and send them back.
So I want to ask you about this because you kind of touched on it, and it's something I'm pretty passionate about. But I know that we recently, I think it was El Paso, right, the Fort Bliss in El Paso, that some of the refugees fleeing from Afghanistan were taken. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And I think it's important maybe to differentiate between the people entering our country illegally and the people fleeing and coming in from the people who have helped our country in Afghanistan and fleeing that country and coming here. Right. Is there a true distinction, or is that in my own head?
Absolutely. I mean, those people are here. They're here legally. They were brought here legally. We have a duty and an obligation from promises that were made with our federal government to help those people and protect those people. I think that this past week or so, we've seen that trust and that promise has been completely violated. That's for a whole nother hour.
Yeah.
But no, there's a complete and total distinction there. So there's nothing. Certainly, we need to help to the extent we can. Those people are, they are in true trouble, and we're trying to help them. The other folks that are coming across illegally.
Right.
They can still come across, but they need to go through the process.
Right. Well, I know that I've gone way over the promised time, so I appreciate you staying on with us. And I think I addressed the questions that came up. I want to say thank you to everyone watching, and thank you to Y100.5 for broadcasting this morning. And hopefully you get to go and be with your family, maybe even take a family vacation soon after you get all of this wrapped up.
Well, we'll see. I know we're going to be back here in October or late September for redistricting and dealing with COVID money. So we know that that's coming. So I know we'll be tied up. There should be a window in there, but it depends what all we get done. So I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that we can get these things done and get them done. And I know that we'd like to have most of September off, but September off for me, probably, I'd like to take a trip somewhere, but September off is probably taking care of other stuff back home in the district, and,
right.
and coming out to Graham and other places and let them know kind of what's going on. But also I've got some other work to do as well that I need to tend to. So that's been pushed back. So I mean, we're ready for anything. I'm just happy to be productive down here now, if we can be, rather than just, waiting on people to show back up. Extremely frustrating. So
I can only imagine. Well, I did promise someone really special to me, my own husband, that I would also, he said, really the most important thing that I needed to ask you about today is college football. So any thoughts before we get off on?
I'll tell you what, I've never been so ready for college football in my life. And I plan on going to a few games. And so I'm, I don't know what all he wants to know, if he wants predictions or if he just wants, but I will say this, there was quite a stir when Texas and Oklahoma wanted to leave the Big 12.
That is why
he kept the Big 12 together. But that's a whole nother story. But no, I'm ready for college football and ready to go to some games, ready to go to some high school games, and ready to kind of get back into a real life.
Well, we appreciate you very much. And if there's anything you need from us, please let us know.
Well, I appreciate the support and appreciate the opportunity. Honestly, I love doing this and love being able to kind of explain kind of what we do and why we do it and what's going on and why certain things were done. So I appreciate the opportunity, appreciate y'all's support, and look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too. Bye.